What was Detroit like at that time, around the 40s
Around the 40s,
and 50s even?
it wasn't, it was Detroit, but it was better than some places I've been, than a lot of places I've been. But it's a lot to be desired. There's a lot of disturbance when it comes to integration. There's a lot of things was still happening that was uncalled for and unappreciated,
Mm.
But you endure it, you had to endure it. It was not a choice.
This is a documentary about Paradise Valley, a segregated neighborhood of Detroit where the African Americans lived and prospered starting around the 1930s. Paradise Valley had two other names, Hastings Street or Black Bottom. The influence Paradise Valley had on Detroit is comparable to what Harlem had on New York City. However, it is often a forgotten piece of history to people who grew up in the Wayne County area in the 21st century. So how did Paradise Valley come about? I had a chance to talk to Dr. Woods, who is a professor here at Eastern Michigan University in the Africology department.
By the 1920s, Detroit is emerging as one of the central metropolitan points of a destination for African Americans who are coming out of the rural South. In fact, three central cities really do emerge. Chicago as you move up the Mississippi, New York as you move up the East Coast, and then Detroit. A major point of attraction, and as we talk about the 1920s, we are talking about the first major decade of what we have typically called the Great Migrations or the Great Black Migrations. You have a lot of things that are happening in the in the second decade of the 20th century. You have a major one being the issue of war. World War I does bring a halt to the secession or to the migration of a number of European immigrants. That opens up a need for jobs, or that opens up a need for workers. And the newly emerging automotive industry, and of course the major force there would be Henry Ford, is making a direct appeal for workers, many of whom will be African Americans coming out of the rural South, and they come to Detroit. Detroit, like all other cities at that point in time, has a racial profile to it. Blacks just can't come anywhere and live anywhere in Detroit. They have to live in certain areas. One of the areas that is developing right at the point of the end of World War I is Paradise Valley, or is what would first be called Black Bottom.
Fortunately, some people still remember those days. I had the opportunity to talk with someone that grew up in Detroit during those time periods. His name is Baron Sapp. He now lives in Southfield, Michigan, and luckily I had the chance to interview him for this documentary. When I asked him why he liked Detroit, this is what he had to say.
Well, I did like it better than the places I'd been, yes. Because the opportunities was here, there's more jobs available.
What kind of jobs did you have in Detroit?
I was a presser, and I did my mother was a dressmaker, and I did some alteration, but basically I was a presser.
I would like to focus on three major points in this documentary: businesses, musicians, and influential figures, since these were three critical parts of the Paradise Valley culture. When I asked Mr. Sapp about the businesses, this is what he had to say.
A lot of fish markets. If you wanted fresh chicken, a live chicken, that's where you went at.
Okay.
Okay? Cleaners was a big deal. Cleaning business was a big deal. And you had beauticians, beauty parlors. Those were big businesses on Hastings Street. all kind of businesses was there, but it was their livelihood, you see.
Mm-hmm.
These different businesses. If you wanted a live chicken, you go there and they would take that chicken. You pick out the chicken you want right in the coop.
Mm-hmm.
The coop said the farmers will bring the chickens in,
Mm-hmm.
put them there, and they dress that chicken out for you, just like you go in the fish market today and
Right.
have your fish, buy fish, you take out what you want, and they have it filleted or however you want it prepared.
Some of the businesses that were widely popular were nightclubs. Paradise Valley had a terrific nightlife, people wandering in and out of bars to see comics, musicians, and entertainers of all sorts. Some of the famous clubs were the Flame Show Bar, 3-Star Bar, the Chocolate Bar, the 666 Club, and the famous Forest Club, owned by Sonny Wilson. An important figure and entrepreneur of the area was Sonny Wilson, who is rarely spoken of, but to the people of Detroit, he is widely known. Forest.
Oh, Forest.
The Forest Club?
Oh, Forest. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that, yeah. That was right downtown. Sonny Wilson.
Even Mr. Sapp knew him.
Very little. I wasn't a bar person, to tell you the truth. I'm not a drinking person, and I never visited bars.
Even though he never met him and didn't even drink, it just shows how influential Sonny Wilson was to Detroit. He is most famously known for owning the Forest Club, which boasted of having the longest bar in Michigan. However, Sonny's influence stems much further than just owning a business. Sonny Wilson wanted to bring African American Detroiters businesses of luxury. He opened a 62-room hotel for black travelers and musicians, for he had experienced the horrible quality of colored hotels elsewhere. In Sonny's biography, it says, quote, Mr. Wilson hopes to inspire younger individuals to resume the pursuit of self-reliance, education, and racial pride, unquote. He did not want people to constantly look at Detroit's past with disillusionment. He wanted young African Americans to establish careers in entertainment, business, or politics. In 1993, Detroit Free Press published an article on Sonny Wilson, who stated that if African Americans are to overcome oppression, they must, and I quote, be let in the mainstream, the stream that will take us through the hearts of all people, as one people, not black or white. One of Sonny's best friends was Joe Louis, another influential figure who opened up the Brown Bomber Chicken Shack in Detroit. However, Joe Louis was mostly known for his incredible talent as a boxer. Louis gave African Americans hope in Detroit when he took on the German boxer Max Schmeling, who represented Nazism during World War II. Louis became the first national African American hero when he defeated him at Yankee Stadium June 22, 1938. Soon after, Joe Louis met Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Sonny Wilson tagged along. When Sonny first met FDR, he said, Mr. President, we could have gotten arrested today for going into the wrong restroom. You've got to do something about this situation. And FDR responded with, well, I'll see what I can do about that. And when Truman was running for re-election, he made his way to Detroit, and through the NAACP, Sonny even arranged for him to stop at Paradise Valley, which was originally unplanned. After he stopped by, though, Truman was grateful to see the amount of support the African American community gave him, and later wrote a letter to Sonny thanking him. Sonny also owned the Mark Twain Hotel in Garfield, which held famous guests such as B.B. King and Duke Ellington. Since most of the hotels in Detroit were whites only, Sonny opened the Mark Twain, which welcomed everyone, employing more people from Paradise Valley. After the hotel business, Sonny ran the Forest Club in Hastings, which had the largest bar in Michigan. And Sonny recalled a time where a white person asked, "Do you serve whites?" And Sonny responded with, "Is this the United States of America?" Sonny Wilson was very familiar with the musicians that were famous in Paradise Valley. Cab Calloway, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, B.B. King, and Duke Ellington were all close friends of Sonny's, often coming to Paradise Valley to visit him and perform. Miles Davis would even stay in Detroit for a while. Some famous talent that came from Hastings at the time were Big Maceo Merriweather, Bobo Jenkins, Baby Boy Warren, Calvin Frazier, Boogie Woogie Red, and the famous John Lee Hooker, whose music is in the documentary.
One of the points of eruption is the Detroit Race Riot of 1943. And this was a riot that was within the anatomy of the post or pre-1960s riots. When we sort of throw out the phrase Detroit Riot.
While Black Bottom had its struggles, it prospered under its own control, with a tight-knit community of people who went to the same school together and supported each other's businesses. This segregated section of Detroit tried to live in paradise as much as possible, entertaining each other and being influenced by their own philosophies. One can only wonder what happened. So what does Paradise Valley look like today? Today, Paradise Valley is Interstate 75. The businesses and neighborhoods that once flourished no longer exist. There is hardly any physical trace of this once great community. By the early 1960s, the city of Detroit demolished the Paradise Valley district as part of a quote-unquote urban renewal project.
Combined with the desire to create a federal highway system that will have to move through cities like Detroit, we also have a very need to get rid of urban blight. We call it simply urban renewal. But quite often urban renewal, whether it was Detroit or elsewhere, was also known by the title within black communities as urban renewal, Negro removal.
The African Americans were banished from their neighborhoods, and because of this, there was forced integration, which led to some high tensions and ultimately affected the city's future.
That, though, is replicated in other cities. It happens in Chicago. If you just travel I-94 into Chicago and then up toward Milwaukee, you can see how it is traveling right through an African American city, or an African American portions. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, Detroit has its Paradise Valley. Minneapolis had its or St. Paul, I should say properly, had its Rondo Street, which was its hub of economic and cultural and sometimes political life as well. Today, the citizens of St. Paul and greater Minneapolis sometime in July have an annual Rondo Street Fair, the purpose of which is to celebrate the historical but no longer evident in the way that it used to be business part of St. Paul. Then I go to Cincinnati. Same dynamic here. African Americans move into what we call the historic West End of Cincinnati. It's just to the west of downtown. They move into an area that had previously in the 19th century been the destination point for German and other European migration coming into Cincinnati. By the 19-teens, the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, that is the central point of entry for African Americans into Cincinnati, much as Paradise Valley or Black Bottom were there.
Detroit's not the only place that this happened to, as Dr. Woods explained. And during this project, I went to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in downtown Detroit, and I found an incredible wealth of information. The exhibit, We Still Rise, is one I recommend looking through. The exhibit itself is quite detailed and has an excellent presentation. There is much to learn there, and I encourage everyone to take a tour. This documentary only scratched the surface of what Paradise Valley was truly like, and if you are interested in this subject matter, there's still much to learn. There are fascinating stories of this piece of history, and I just hope they are not forgotten anytime soon.